in a draft where you're looking at the first round and you're saying, okay, it might be a little thinner than in the past, there's 12 defensemen projected to be first-round picks. Mm-hmm. So it could be the year of the D-man. It could be the year of the blue liner. So let's just see how many defensemen get selected in the first round of 32.
Welcome to another off-season edition of Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets. I'm alongside the voice of the Winnipeg Jets, Paul Edmonds. Of course, I'm Jaime Thomas. A few things to take care of. It is draft season. We're getting that right up the corner. The Stanley Cup Final is still going as we tape this podcast. So three things we're going to go over. The Jets' hiring of their assistant coaches, the 5 Manitobans that are listed by Central Scouting ahead of this NHL draft, and the three things that Paul Edmonds is looking forward to at the National Hockey League draft coming up this weekend in Vegas. So first order of business, Paul. Assistant coaches, Dean Chynoweth, Davis Payne, Scott Arniel has rounded out his coaching staff. Exciting times, right?
Yeah, I think all great hires.
Yeah.
So let's just look at it. Both Davis Payne and Dean Chynoweth have played in the league. Mm-hmm. So there's credibility and relatability from that standpoint for both of these guys. Plus, when you look at the resume and the amount of time that they've coached in the National Hockey League, Davis Payne is a head coach in St. Louis, a lot of assistant coaching and associate coaching time with Dean Chynoweth. I mean, these guys in their roles, they're going to understand what they need to do and be part of the team, the coaching team. So Dean Chynoweth, I mean, this is where it gets interesting for me. He was a rugged player when he played in the Western Hockey League. He won a Memorial Cup. He was captain of the Medicine Hat Tigers. He led the Tigers 2 years in a row in penalty minutes. So does the defensive core now, because that's what he's going to be responsible for, and the penalty kill, take on a little bit of that role of that coach, right? A little bit of that persona that we always talk about and hear about, where a coach, a head coach, can have his persona kind of go through the team and permeate through the team to some degree. Does that happen with the defensive core here? Yeah. The other part is, Davis Payne, 14 years in the National Hockey League. He knows his role as well. He knows how to scheme probably for some power play, and I'm sure he's looked at some film of both penalty kills from other teams that had success against the Jets, and then the Jets' power play and how he can make it better. And I'm sure those were all conversations that went into the hiring process and the interview process with Scott Arniel. So, a couple of things. They've got the credibility, they've got the relatability, they've got the experience. They know their roles, but most importantly, I think the hiring of both Davis Payne and Dean Chynoweth comes with the fact that they know the league. It should be seamless when they kind of start to scheme together on what they want to do as a coaching staff.
Yeah, not just because he's here, but Mitchell Clinton wrote a wonderful article on WinnipegJets.com on both the new coaches here in Winnipeg and the excitement about coming here. Of course, Dean Chynoweth will handle the defense and the penalty kill. Davis Payne, forwards and power play. Just quickly on the power play. Almost looks like the same personnel coming back, obviously. Where do you think Davis Payne, his experience, plays into this? And he had a pretty good power play in Ottawa for a long stretch there as well.
Well, I've always said that I'd like to see a little more puck movement.
Yeah.
And I wonder, and rotation as well. Mm-hmm. So you don't just necessarily have to have somebody stationary at the hash marks looking for one-timers. That's an option. They started to move the puck into the middle, not necessarily as effectively as you would like to have seen, but it became another option. And then I think the other two that I think that you want to open up would be Josh Morrissey shooting the puck from up top more, giving him that role just to kind of wind up and fire, kind of like what you saw with Dustin Byfuglien over the years there and why it was successful.
Yeah.
But Gabe Vilardi gives them that spot down on that goal line that was a new wrinkle to the Winnipeg Jets power play last year. So I think the combination of all of that, you look at what you want to do. You don't want to be predictable, but at the same time, you want to kind of throw a different wrinkle at some of these penalty kills. Because, look, there's no secrets on video, right? Everybody can see it. But if you have options in real time, then it's hard to defend. So I think maybe more shots from up top might be a possibility, and then really utilizing Vilardi from that goal line, whether it's the drop step move out in front or maybe moving it to the wing for the one-timer at the hash marks, or then into the middle and that slot area and everybody crashing from there. So I think there's options, and we'll see what they do. That'll be a topic of conversation for sure when we get an opportunity to talk to Davis Payne about how he sees things. I don't think he's going to give us all of his secrets,
for sure,
of course, but we'll get to see that over practice time on what they're trying to employ this year.
It is draft week, and 5 Manitobans were listed by Central Scouting, the final rankings. We'll go through them here momentarily, but let's begin with your relationship with Hockey Manitoba and, of course, Hockey Canada, which leads us to this podcast here today.
Well, I mean, I grew up in the province, and I've coached. I have my coaching levels through Hockey Canada. I've always been involved with people. I know a lot of people in that Hockey Manitoba office through when we first started out, and everybody's graduated to bigger and better things. And I've just always felt I've had kids that I'm kind of pushing through myself, and I just kind of always wanted to feel like I wanted to give back, and I just have a general interest in what's going on with hockey in our market, and then those elite players as well, right? So there's always kinds of great stories that come out of these types of things. And for the kids, there's 5 of them that could potentially be drafted this year, and they're all 18 years old. I kind of look and say, well, it's not the end of the line here if you don't get drafted by a National Hockey League team this year. It's the Ryan Garbett story for me, a Winnipegger that played high school hockey at Vincent Massey, was never drafted, ended up playing 300-plus games in the National Hockey League. So the dreams can still come true despite the fact that you might not get drafted in this for most of them, their first year of eligibility to be drafted. I've just had a general interest in hockey and elite hockey and prospects in the province, and I try to assign myself to know what's kind of going on in and around the market.
Hi, I'm Gabriel Velarde, and this is the Ground Control Podcast.
Okay, one of the 5 players is a goaltender. We'll get to him last year, but let's begin with the 4 skaters. Left winger Clarke Caswell, a Brandonite, ranked 77th. Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, this is a guy that had a real good year this year in the Western Hockey League with Swift Current, and he's projected to go probably second or third round in around there. He's the highest Manitoban skater projected. 5'11", he's got decent size. He certainly can make some plays, and he's a very good defensive player as well. They're projecting that this coming year, this next season in the Western Hockey League will be a real breakout season for him. So when he goes, and I predict that he's going to go, somebody's going to have a player that's only going to get better before they make the jump to the National Hockey League. Again, probably a guy that you're going to look at as a 3rd or 4th liner in the National Hockey League. But we'll keep an eye on Clarke Caswell this year going into his Western Hockey League season in Swift Current, because I think the numbers, and while he wasn't a point-per-game player, the numbers will dictate this year that he'll have a real breakout offensive season, and we'll see where he goes. But probably a late 2nd, early 3rd round selection by the National Hockey League in this draft.
All right, his teammate, and you mentioned him just a little bit earlier, Luke Mistelbacher from Steinbach. Tell us a little bit about him, 119th in Central Scouting.
Steinbach, Marchand areas, so down and around that area, and he's a Swift Current Bronco as well. He'll be 19 years old coming up in November. This guy is the sleeper of the 5 Manitobans. He had some changes in where he was playing halfway through the year and really took off offensively. He's got pretty good size at 6 feet. Comes from a big stock family. They used to own a cattle ranch in the province. They're cattlemen, so he's probably worked and thrown a few bales around as well. The old Bobby Hull kind of stories. But this was, for my kind of reporting and research, this is a guy that a lot of teams are going to keep an eye on to see where he goes. And again, probably a 3rd rounder, a little bit behind his teammate in Clarke Caswell. But Luke Mistelbacher, I think, has the potential to jump up in the draft and not only be a sleeper, but a fielder's choice, as somebody once said to me recently about you look at him and he might be that player that you really like, or some would just pass on him. But if you really like him, you really like him. And if he's available, you might take a chance on him. Point-per-game player, and that really took off in the second half of the year. He's got an elite shot, can curl and drag. They'd like to see him certainly improve his skating. And that's always an issue for these young players. I mean, I tell stories to kids all the time, including my own. Sidney Crosby, every offseason, still works on his skating. Yeah. So there's always that improvement to make. So I like Luke Mistelbacher in this draft, and let's see where he gets to.
All right, let's move back to the blue line. 216, Josh Fluker from Wenatchee, and he is from Boisevin. Yeah.
So
I love playing this game with you. Okay. Where the heck is Boisevin?
Boisevin is in kind of the southwest portion of the province. Mm-hmm. it would be, if I had to characterize it, it would kind of be like our Alberta. It has a lot of cattle, it has a lot of oil and gas, has a lot of natural gas. So it has some money down in that corner, and it's a rich area for sports for sure. And Josh Fluker is just another one of those kids that has come out and really kind of established himself. He was in Swift Current and then ended up halfway through the year in Wenatchee. This is the one defenseman of the whole lot, and I'll get to the defenseman of this draft when we get to kind of getting through this, but he has the ability to be a very good offensive defenseman. His skating is top-notch. It's NHL level already. He has to kind of work his way into moving the puck efficiently, which he can do, but then making the plays finish, if you know what I mean. Whether that's a pass to get to a shot to the net or actually taking the puck to the net, and also being a better defensive player. But Josh Fluker, I think, is going to probably show up on somebody's radar just because his ability to skate and move the puck. So, good player. Let's see what happens. Got settled in Wenatchee, and it's always tough to get traded for the first time. He kind of struggled with some points. So the numbers offensively weren't there, but I think that you're going to see, again, just like I said with Clarke Caswell, I think bigger and better things in the Western Hockey League as he gets more comfortable going into another season this fall.
We're another winger. He is actually from Winnipeg. Gavin Hodnett plays for the Edmonton Oil Kings.
Well, this guy, you can look at him and say at 5'8", he's undersized. But I look at a guy like Brad Marchand, and he was undersized all his career. And
a lot of examples.
Yeah, there certainly is. And I think the new rules in the game in the last 10, 15 years have allowed guys that can skate and are tenacious to find a place in the game for sure. And that's where Gavin Hodnett is at. I mean, he had a lot of points this year, and he can skate, he can make plays, he's dynamic. The knock on him is he, because of his size, is going to have to improve in making physical contact. That's not running somebody through the wall. It's not an open ice body check. It's getting in on somebody's hands and winning that battle along the boards or in the corners. And from that standpoint, then emerging off the boards or the corner boards with the puck and making a play. He can make the play when he's got open ice. They just want to see him improve his defensive game and his physical game along those lines. So he's the last one that's going to be projected to be picked.
Yeah.
But somebody might take a chance on him just because of the high-end offensive skill that he does have and the skating ability.
We never like to leave goaltenders out because you can't win championships without them. So Dawson Cowan from Spokane and Warren, Manitoba.
That's just up number 6, by the way. It's not that far.
You last question.
Good size at 6'1", and had a real breakout year with Spokane this year. Played over 40 games, kind of assumed the number one role.
Yeah.
Very comfortable in games that are kind of predictable. They want to see him improve when the game gets out of that predictability, right? And I think that's the growth for all of these guys. I mean, when you look at the players that we're talking about, they all have high-end skills in certain aspects of the game, but there's also improvements in portions of their game that need to be worked on. And if they didn't have anything to work on, of course, we wouldn't be having these conversations and they'd all be first-round, first overall picks, but they're not. So, when it comes to Dawson Cowan, I think bigger and better things for sure as well. Another year in the Western Hockey League. And then I think we got Spokane to the playoffs, and they didn't do a great job. They ran into Prince George in the first round, and not a great opponent. But I think what you're trying to do is build on that 40-plus games and assuming the primary role, and then getting them to the playoffs once again, and then performing in the playoffs. And that's the cyclical nature of major junior hockey. Is every year that the more guys you keep, the better you're going to get, right? Because a lot of guys age out, guys move on. When it comes to opportunities in the AHL or the NHL. So, a pretty good overall pick of Manitobans this year, and then we get the goaltender in there. Now, he's also, he's ranked pretty high. I mean, 5th overall in Citrus Scouting for goaltenders. So, from that standpoint, let's see where he goes. Typically now, though, I mean, the days of selecting goaltenders in the first or high first-round or second-round picks are over. So, we'll see exactly where Dawson Cowan lands this year.
All right, those are 5 Manitobans listed on Central Scouting ahead of the National Hockey League draft, which goes Friday, Saturday in Vegas. It should be very interesting in Vegas. Moving on to the 3 things you're looking to see at the National Hockey League draft. The Winnipeg Jets, as we do this podcast, do not have a first-round pick. Is that included into what you're looking to see this weekend coming up?
Indeed it is.
Yeah.
And kind of, again, going and asking some questions, unless something drops on the Jets' lap from that standpoint where irrefutably they just cannot not do a deal, I don't know that they're going to be all that pursuant in trying to get a number one pick just to get a number one pick. And the reason for that is this.
Yeah.
When you get past that first 5 or 6 picks in this draft, it's a lot of players that are very similar. So again, you come back to that, you really love this guy or you don't. And so it's not like it's a draft that's going to knock your socks off. So if you're comfortable with selecting number 2 and having 1 pick in the first 3 rounds and knowing that you can get somebody that you like at that spot where they are right now, then why give up an asset or somebody from your roster just to have a first-round pick? It might not be the year. It might not be sage to do that this year because the draft is not weak, but it's a little thinner than it has been in the last few years. And again, cyclical nature of what comes with the birth ages of whatever's coming down the pike. So I'll be looking to see if something changes in that regard. But I was told it's not a high priority right now for the Jets when it comes to acquiring a first-round pick or getting that first-round pick back that they gave up to Montreal in getting Sean Monahan.
All right, and then number 2 things you're looking to see.
Utah. I mean, they get their first pick, and I think it's 7th overall this year or 6th or 7th overall. Similar situation to 2011 and 7th overall for Mark Scheifele.
Is this going to be the jersey? There's not going to be the same jersey they're going to have going forward. It's pretty interesting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Mark Scheifele will always go down in the annals of Winnipeg Jets history as being their first pick since relocation. Same thing here. Mark Scheifele, Atlanta to Winnipeg, and he gets selected in the first round, 7th overall. Arizona to Utah. So who's going to be that player that becomes the Utah Hockey Club's Mark Scheifele? So I'm looking to see who they select and how that player fits into the grand scheme of things and where they project that player to be in a year or two. So, just for, I guess, sentimental sake, I'm interested to see what Utah does.
Yeah, a lot of top prospects already in that pipeline for the Utah Hockey Club. And then last but not least, number 3.
That would be in a draft where you're looking at the first round and you're saying, okay, it might be a little thinner than in the past. There's 12 defensemen projected to be first-round picks. So it could be the year of the D-man. It could be the year of the blue liner. So let's just see how many defensemen get selected in the first round of 32. And like I said, 12 are projected to be first-rounders. Guys can slip. Guys can move up. So we'll see what happens. But it could be the year of the defenseman in this draft, so I'll watch for that as well.
Yeah, a lot of fun coming up this weekend. A heavy schedule of the National Hockey League. A lot of stuff going on this week leading up to the NHL draft. Of course, free agency coming afterwards. Paulie, my friend, thanks so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
On behalf of Paul Edmonds, I'm Jaime Thomas. This is the latest edition of Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets.